What's up everyone, Ivan from Darkglass here, and today I will give you an overview of the latest Anagram update, KosmOS version 1.9.0. For this version, we bring you two new bass amplifier blocks, the black and yellow Tiny Lark 3 and the Swirl-900. The black and yellow Tiny Lark 3 delivers an organic response that preserves the true character of your instrument, while its flexible controls deliver advanced tonal shaping capabilities for both modern and vintage sounds. The Swirl-900 bridges the gap between vintage and modern, combining the warmth of a tube preamp section with the power and precision of solid-state designs. This allows you to add character and saturation to your tone, and then use the powerful EQ section to place your bass exactly where it belongs in a mix. Let's now listen to how these amps sound like, and then we'll explore their controls. Now I'll show you the controls of the amps and also the presets of the tones that you just heard, which by the way you can also find in the Darkglass suite. Here I have the black and yellow slap bass preset, and I have the Tiny Lark 3 amp, the matching 4x10 black and yellow cabinet, and a bus compressor. Just for testing, I'm going to disable the compressor and I'm going to show you how that sounds like. Now let's check out the controls. From left to right I have the input gain, and that's pretty useful to control what level of signal flows into the rest of the controls of the amp, and also to adjust for different basses and output of basses. So if you have a low output bass, you can raise this. If you have a hot output bass, you probably will need a little bit less of the gain. Next we have the bass control, and as you can see right now it's in the 12 o'clock position, so I'm not boosting or cutting anything because of how I've configured and set the other controls on the amp. But let's hear how this sounds like, because it's a pretty powerful control and the frequency boost is around 40 Hz. Now if I boost, and as you can hear, just boosting a little bit, like at 6.4, it's already a pretty considerable increase of low end and body of the signal. So even if I boost it a bit more, this one is really powerful, as you heard. It adds a lot of weight and body to the signal, but be careful because it's easy to overdo it if you boost too much and your signal might get a bit muddy. So a little bit of a boost definitely goes a long way here. And of course, you can always cut. If things get too boomy at some point. Then we have the low mids. And here I'm cutting just a little bit, and this is a boost and cut around 350 Hz more or less. Now, as you can hear, it adds some articulation to the notes. Then we have the high mids, and this one sits at around 800 Hz. So let's hear how that sounds like. As you could hear, when boosting high mids, you do add a bit of a sparkle in the top end, but most importantly is that you bring out really a lot of note definition and clarity to the sound without making the bass sound harsh, which is really ideal when playing live, for example. Next to the high mids, we have the highs, and this one sits pretty high up in the treble range at around 10K. The high control is definitely there to bring more sizzle, more of that top end shine to your tone. And as you can hear, even when boosting pretty much all the way, and just for fun, let's boost it all the way. It's not really harsh. You probably don't need to boost as much, not all the way, because just a little bit definitely brings out some of that top end sizzle. So I pulled back to 7.3. Back to 5. All the way to the right on the first page of the amp, we have the modern filter. And the more we turn it clockwise, the more mid-range we're going to cut, and also at the same time, the more bass and treble that are going to be boosted. This is why I didn't have much of an EQ in the example of the amp, because pretty much everything was being done using the modern filter. Now I'm going to pull back all the way to the minimum setting. This is flat. And boost it again. Just using this knob really changes the sound of the amp. So if you don't want to have to adjust many parameters at the same time, just using this one can get you in the general ballpark of the tone that you're looking for. Now on the second page of the amp, we have the vintage filter. All the way counterclockwise, it is flat, it is off, and the more we turn it clockwise, the more of a treble roll-off we're going to have. So your sound is going to be more mid-present. So if I start at the lowest position, boost it, as you could hear, boosting this control makes your sound warmer because it's removing top-end frequencies, and this is really helpful depending on the style of music that you're playing. It's really useful for styles of music such as blues, reggae, R&B, soul, and so on. And last but not least, we have the overall level control to adjust the volume going out of the amp to the next blocks in the signal chain. Moving on, we have the Swirl-900 amp, also with a matching Swirl-115 cabinet, and I have the luminal compressor, which I'm going to bypass now. For me personally, one of the coolest features of the amp is the gain control. And as you can see here, I'm boosting quite aggressively at 8.3. That's because I can get some breakup, some hair, some saturation happening if I boost it. And as you can hear, when I dig in, you do hear that breakup happening. That is really useful to bring out the mid-range, to bring saturation to your tone, and also some compression, which is going to help your bass sit better in a mix. Next to the gain, we have the aura shaper, and this is a pretty interesting control that makes the amp pretty unique. All the way to the left, it's flat, it's not doing anything to your tone, and from the minimum value up until 12 o'clock, it's adding volume and a little bit of a bass, but very, very, very subtle. From the 12 o'clock position, or 5 on the dial, all the way to the right, is going to boost bass and treble simultaneously, and also do a pretty aggressive cut on the low mid-range. So let's hear how all of this sounds like. I'm going to start flat. And all the way off. Next to the aura shaper, we have the bass control. And this one sits at around 80 Hz, and as you could hear, it's also a really powerful boost. It adds a lot of body and weight to your tone. Next to the bass, we have the start of the mid-range controls, which are semi-parametric. We have low mids, mids, and high mids. And for each one of those, we can control the gain, so the boost or cut, but also the frequency that we're boosting or cutting. And the interesting thing here is that when we pick lower frequencies, so all the way or going counterclockwise compared to higher frequency ranges, the Q, so the width of the EQ move that we're doing, is going to change as well. For the lower frequencies, the Q is going to be narrower compared to for higher frequencies, where the Q is going to be wider. And this applies to all of the mid bands here, for the low mids, for the mids, and for the high mids. Now let's hear how that sounds like. I'm going to boost quite a bit and then sweep through the frequencies of the low mids, the mids, and the high mids. So let's start with the low mids. Right now I'm going to boost, let's say there, and go all the way counterclockwise. through a frequency really changes the sound and character of the boost that you're doing. Now let's check out the mids. Again, here I'm going to do a pretty considerable boost and sweep through the frequencies, starting all the way to the left. And now the same thing for the high mids. So I'm going to boost quite aggressively and start sweeping. The semi-parametric mid-range section is extremely flexible and versatile, and a great way to find the frequencies that you want to boost or cut is to do as I just demonstrated, to do a pretty aggressive boost and then sweep to find the frequency that you want to boost or cut. As the last part of our EQ section, we have the treble control, so let's hear how that sounds like. And cutting. As you could hear, this helps to bring a lot of definition and clarity to the tone without being overly harsh, because it's actually boosting at around 2000 Hz, so it's more like a high mid boost than an actual treble boost. And for the last control of the amp, we have the level control, which as you can see is set at 0.9, and that is because I am boosting quite a bit of the input gain, so I have to compensate and pull down the level to avoid clipping. Last but not least, we have improved USB compatibility with iPad devices and have implemented some general bug fixes. For more information on the Anagram, please visit darkglass.com or click the link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.